Welcome, everyone. We have a really exciting moment possible today. And Vanessa Naja is here. And I've just recently met her. So, in one way, she's a stranger, and another way, she's a deep cohort, a deep sister already, because my one meeting with her was life-changing. So I'm going to bring her on and have you get to know her within our conversation. I'm going to ask her questions I don't know the answer to yet, and we'll get to know her better together. So thank you for coming, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosalind, and thank you for such a wonderful introduction. I also really felt so connected in getting to know you better through your human design, because it's so fascinating to just be able to connect energetically, but also look at your design and know so much about how you work
Yeah.
by looking at your design and your chart.
So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I feel I know our community. And there will be people who will say, what is human design? Never heard of it. I find that it's the younger generation in business, particularly, that has taken hold of human design. But younger meaning probably 40 and under, or 45 and under, or 50, something like that. It used to be Myers-Briggs that was very popular in business. I don't even know if you know what that is. Do you know what that is? Yeah.
I do know what it is, yes.
And when the Enneagram was around with Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram is more about motivation of our strategy, the strategy we've used, not our real self, our authentic self, because that's essence. That's not our strategy for anyone. But Myers-Briggs spoke to how we acted in the world. And I kind of feel like I want to ask you two things at once. Tell us how human design came about, what it is, and what does it speak to motivation and behavior?
So that is a great question. And I'll just start with what is human design? And human design is really a system of self-understanding. It's a tool of personal development, and it gives you really deep insights on how your energy flows, basically what your overall electromagnetic frequency is, which is your aura, and how you can really step into the highest expression of that frequency so that you can reduce unnecessary resistance in your life and really live the life that you were born to live. And there are a lot of like deep, detailed nuances about human design. And we may or may not get into that in this conversation. We'll see where it flows. However, one of the things that makes human design so unique and so practical is that it gives you a very specific way of interacting with life, with other people, and making decisions that are correct and authentic for you, that rely on your own inner authority versus looking to the outside to help me make decisions. And this is called your strategy and your authority in human design, and it's unique to you. So it's definitely not a one size fits all system. And it's really life changing when you start to flow with your energy in that way. Now, it gives you way deeper nuances than just your strategy and authority, but that is a very practical top layer aspect of human design that is really helpful.
So one
The
of the
way
things you're really good at, I'm going to interrupt you. Can you mark down where you were going to go? Because I don't want you
Yes.
to lose that. And I don't want to lose any of our people. So we've used the word aura, we've used the word energy. That's in the category for some people as woo-woo, but we know that Rosalind has a certain energy. Every single person you know, they're just meeting you. You have a certain energy. We don't, it's not woo-woo, it's very tangible, right? And it's more than performance. People are talking a lot about performance energy. And maybe that includes what you intend, how you intend to look and act, but it also includes your authentic energy. You cannot get away from it, right? So,
Yeah, and oh yeah, this is also, I just want to throw in really quickly. I said specifically electromagnetic frequency, which has actually been proven by science that we all have an electromagnetic frequency field that extends out beyond our body, and other fields interact with it. And so
so
this is what I'm talking about in terms of aura and energy, is your scientifically proven electromagnetic frequency.
okay, so does that change if I'm in a good mood and I'm high, or I'm in a bad mood and I'm low? Does my electromagnetic frequency change?
Yes, it can change. And also when we're talking about it from human design terms, um, your your electromagnetic frequency communicates with other people's electromagnetic frequency. And it's what it communicates that really matters. So is your frequency communicating static and other people are like, I don't understand, or they're, receiving distortion? Or is it communicating a clear frequency so that when other people pick up on it, they really receive what you are giving to them? And we also call this, so there is BG5, which is the official business application of human design. And we call this your nonverbal presence. So this is your electromagnetic frequency. This is your aura. This is your nonverbal presence. And you want it to communicate very clearly so that other people are picking up basically what you're sending out there. And I
So
don't
okay, go ahead.
I don't want to distort this with like being high vibe or low vibe. It doesn't mean like you have to be in a good mood all the time or happy and joyous, because that's not necessarily authentic. Like you're going to have feelings, and sometimes you're going to have joyful, uplifting feelings, and other times they're going to be more angry or disappointed, or sad, because you're human, and you do not want to override those feelings. You do want to feel your feelings, allow yourself to process them, let them move through your body, and express them in ways that are constructive versus destructive. So I don't want to say there's good or bad, but there is clear frequency and then there is distorted frequency. And so say, for example, if you're really mad right now, but you're trying to put on a happy face and make it seem like everything's okay, your frequency is going to come across as really distorted. And the
Mhm.
people that are picking it up are going to be like, I don't know what's happening because
Yeah.
something's off.
Yeah, I like that, distorted and clear. I like that because it gets away from good and bad, which is takes us down the rabbit hole. And it's part of all of our conditioning. And our youngest self thinks that's all they can do is think in terms of good or bad. Mommy or daddy or caretaker likes this or they don't. I'm good or I'm bad, right?
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up the term conditioning, because one of the big things with human design is it's a tool of deconditioning. It is a tool that,
Mm,
yeah, it lets you, like, it's a tool of letting go of all of the parts of yourself that you have taken on that are not actually you. And we can refer to this as the not self. And I've heard you refer to it as the not I. In human design, they say the not self.
mhm,
It helps you release all of that to really understand who you are so that you can step into your most authentic expression.
mm. So how did this come about? Where did it come from?
So there was a gentleman named Robert Allen Krakauer, I think, Canadian man. And in 1987, he was in Ibiza, Spain, where I've also spent a lot of time. That's a whole other side story. But he was there doing the harmonic convergence, which was a big celestial event. And while he was there, it was channeled I believe it was 8 days and 8 nights, this voice came through him, like a channeled voice that downloaded this entire system to him. And at that point, the name was changed to Ra Uru. So anytime you hear about human design, you will often hear people speak about Ra, and that is the founder or the channeler of the official system. And he was tasked with bringing the system out and teaching it to people. And so that is how it first began. And it is a synthesis. It blends different aspects of different systems. So it has elements of astrology. It has elements of the Chinese I Ching. It has elements of the chakra system. It has elements of the Kabbalah tree of life, and then also blends in quantum physics, biology, genetics. Like it's a really robust, in-depth system that was channeled and taught and brings us to where we are today with it.
Mhm. And it can feel very imposing if we try to take it all on in the beginning. And a friend of mine and I tried it on a couple of years ago, and we went like, oh my God, we're not smart enough. We're not like, what is this? It was so much. And then, of course, we didn't believe because we didn't have anything tangible to hold on to except generalities and words that we understood, manifestor, generator. We could understand what the words were, but it didn't mean anything. So I encourage you, if you're hearing this for the first time, and maybe you heard channeling and you thought, there's so many fake channelers. Oh, okay, garbage. We do that, good and bad, black and white, right or wrong. But I encourage you, just keep listening. Don't make up your mind yet. I know that human design was not for me until I met Vanessa, because I had every barrier in front of me, including my attitude. It wasn't for me. The universe said no, no, no. But when we get a no, that doesn't mean it's no forever. It's no for now. That's how I take it. What about you, Vanessa?
I love that you brought this up. So there's a couple of things. One, for all you skeptics out there, it's good to doubt information. You might actually have that in your design as something
Mhm.
that is consistent for you. And I also want to say that when Rod channeled human design, he channeled some things that at the time were not proven by science. And one of them is neutrinos that have now not only been proven by science, but they are doing massive research around neutrinos, like these
What is
teeny,
that
teeny.
word?
A
What is
neutrino is like a tiny, like the smallest possible particle that carries mass. And we are bombarded by, don't quote me on the numbers. I'm not even going to give a real number because I don't know what it is, but it's giant, like gazillions of them every minute. And they get filtered through planets and stars and the sun. And we're constantly being bombarded by them. And this is also like how our astrological chart is formed based on the energy that was moving through different planets in different locations at the time of your birth. Now, again, as when Roth channeled this was not proven by science. It has since been proven that these particles actually do carry information that are constantly bombarding us. And there is research going on right now. And you could look up things, but specifically they're doing things in Japan, like really deep underground bunkers, where in order for this energy has to pass through a whole lot of Mother Earth in order to get there. But they're doing like really interesting research around neutrinos. So just because something hasn't been scientifically proven doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. And it's still good to be skeptical of the information and to really allow yourself to be open to it and see what lands for you. And it's going to be different for all of us, because for me, when I first learned about human design, immediately I was like, yes, I want literally everything. And I dove right in,
Mhm.
and I never came up for air because there's so much in my design. The love for information, for learning, for studying, for investigating, for finding out more is something that is really huge in my design. So even the way when I learned about it, my immediate yes response is part of my design, meaning this is something that's correct for me that I want to research and dive into deeper. And it's going to be different for all of us. I know lots of people who were exposed to human design and at first started, no. And then years later, they came back and were like, yes,
Well,
now is
that's
the time.
me. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I know lots of people like that. And I also know a lot of people that were like me, like literally the day they found out about it, they just dove in immediately
Yes.
and just immersed themselves. And, you know, when it comes to learning it, because it's such a robust, in-depth system, you just take it piece by piece and you're designed to experiment with it. It's known as a human design experiment. You try it out and you see like what works for you, what doesn't work for you. I mean, really, the whole thing is about being your own inner authority and knowing what is and isn't true for you. And maybe you don't resonate with the system and it's not true for you. And that is also totally okay.
So how did you find it yourself? And tell us your emotional journey, because you referenced that, but I don't know that story.
Okay, so I was kind of one of those situations. This is when I was still living in the States in California. And I was living on a property, you know, little cottages, and there was somebody else living on the property that I'd had a couple of conversations with. I didn't know her very well, but she kind of needed a last minute ride to the airport. And I just happened to be available to do it. And while we are sitting in traffic on the way to the airport, she asked me if I'd heard of human design because we were into, you know, other, you know, she knew I was into like energetic stuff. And I said, no, tell me more. And she told me what it was. And I immediately was like, how have I not heard of this? I am into all of these systems that are synthesized are things I'm really interested in. And I have at some point in my life studied or investigated. So in the car ride, she actually did a little chart for me and she told me the little that she knew about it. And the second I got back home, I immediately started researching it, like immediately. And within a week, I was in a certification course and just have kept going deeper and deeper and deeper, like ever since then. But it was just an immediate, like, how do I not know about this? I
So
must know.
you referenced how it was the one thing, the one program, the one pathway, if you will, that shifted your emotional life.
Okay, yes, I do want to talk more about that. So one thing that human design shows you is very clear how your emotional system works. And I'm going to try to keep this simple, but
Good.
there are two main variations. One is that your emotional system or your emotional awareness center is consistent. In human design, this is known as defined. And when it is consistent, as it is for both you and I, and 55% of the population, you are going to have these waves of emotion that are flowing through you, and they can show up differently depending on how you're designed, but you know there is a wave that sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's neutral, and that wave is going to color how you perceive things. It's going to be separate from, you know, oh, I'm happy because something really great happened today, or I'm sad because something really horrible happened today. We all have those feelings, regardless of your design. You're going to have those circumstantial feelings. If you are consistent or defined in your emotional center in human design, you also have that wave. And when you have that wave, it means you need to, when you're making big decisions, means you need to really ride it out because wherever you are on your wave, you're going to see things from a very different perspective. So you're not meant to make in the moment decisions on the bigger things in life. So that part is really important. Then the other side of it is if you're inconsistent, or this is known as undefined in your emotional center in human design. So this is about 45% of the population. And those people can be, and this is not to say that people that are consistent aren't also empathic, but people that are undefined in their emotional center or inconsistent in how they experience emotions, those people take in and amplify the emotional waves that are going on around them, meaning they are very attuned emotionally to what other people's waves are.
Mm.
And those people need to be really, really careful in their decision-making process that they are not influenced by other people's emotions. They're able to become incredibly wise about emotional systems. They're incredibly gifted at reflecting back other people's emotional processes. And they're also not meant to be bullied around by other people's emotions, as I
So
like to
let
say.
me ask you a question because I actually don't know the answer. So there's a type in the Enneagram that pulls everyone when they have an issue. What do you think? What do you, not everyone, but the people they respect, the people close to them. And that sounds like what you're talking about with undefined, but they don't actually listen most of the time to what the advice is.
So it's interesting because there's going to be a lot of other parts in human design that speak to this. I can't exclusively speak to this from the emotional center. And this can also be conditioning that, that's the thing with human design is you're meant to discover what your own inner authority is, what is true for you. And there are some decision-making styles that do require some reflection off the correct other. So it's not just anybody. However, still, it's important that if you are inconsistent or undefined in the emotional center, that you are not, for example, you want to do something, it's correct for you. Your inner authority has said it's correct for you. And now you're like, ooh, that person might not like it. And I don't want to pick up or feel their negative emotions around it. So I'm not going to do it. This is known as like in human design language, we talk about avoiding confrontation and avoiding truth. It's like you're making decisions that keep other people happy so that you don't need to feel their feelings about it. And
Mhm.
so in human
So
design,
the
like,
conflict avoidance in that situation is more important than what your authority tells you.
yeah, and then what is correct for you.
Yeah, that's what
So
I'm saying is
yeah, and
your authority. Mhm.
so that's one thing that can come up.
So let's take an example from my chart that was very powerful, and so my throat chakra is defined, it's filled in, right?
Hold on,
And
I'm gonna actually pull your chart so I can look at it while we're talking.
maybe even we can screen share so they see what a chart looks like.
Um, the only reason I don't want to do that is because I won't be able to block out. I mean, if you want to, after the fact, block out any personally identifying information, we could do that. But if we screen share, it's gonna, show information about you that you might not want shared.
I don't think there's anything that people can't know about me, but we don't need to show it. We can put in, maybe you can, maybe my assistant can get a picture of a chart. They're on the web.
Yeah, okay, and then we can always insert it into the video.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll put, yeah, and we'll put it with the email that goes out.
yeah.
So,
So yes, your throat center, as it's known in human design, is about communication, action, and expression is consistent for you.
okay, so someone whose throat chakra was not filled in, was undefined, um, what would that look like for them? What does that mean if it was undefined and because everybody can connect to a need to communicate. We all have to communicate in intimate relationships. For me, it was super important at this stage in my life to understand that that's where my aliveness comes from. I have a need besides the particular communication, whether it's TED or Enneagram or whatever, that this, for me to feel satisfied in life, be in balance, I need to be communicating. Like it's that big for me. It's not that I'm a good teacher. I'd heard it before, like, oh yeah, you should teach because you have the ability to be, you know what I mean? It isn't about that. But what does it mean for someone whose throat chakra is not defined? They still have to communicate.
Okay, so I want to clarify the things that we talked about in your reading in your chart. It wasn't just the fact that you had a defined or consistent throat center. based on the things we talked about. There was a lot of other things pulled together in your chart for specifically what we talked about with your need to communicate and how to communicate on the different platforms. So I just want to specify that this is not something that would directly apply to anybody that has a defined or consistent throat center in their design. Because
Okay.
the way the throat center can be configured, there are tons of different ways that it can be configured, and this was very specific to your design. What I can say here is that the difference, well, first of all, there is nothing that you can or cannot do based on what your human design chart says. If it is something that feels correct for you, that you're excited about, that really lights you up, you can do it. And it's more of a matter of how you do it, not what you do. Now, when it comes to the
Let's
throat,
stay with that a minute. That's like so brilliant and so important. I mean, I hope everybody heard that. Let's say it again. There's nothing you can or can't do based on your human design. And if something lights you up, it's for you, but it's a question of how you do it. Is that what you said?
yes. So I never want you to use your human design chart as a limiter or have anybody tell you in the human design world that you cannot do something because of something in your chart, because it's not true. Your chart is more of a tool, like a guidepost, a signpost of moving in the correct direction for you and how you do that. What you do is really up to you, like what feels correct for you and what lights you up. And
What
so
are
I want
other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I just want to specify that because you do see a lot of people out in the world saying, "Oh, I can't do that because of this in my chart," or "Well, I can't do that because my chart says this," and that's not at all how we're looking at your design. Your
No, that
design, there are
would be
certain
false.
things that you're very well gifted for. There are strengths that you have that are very clear in your design. And there are other areas that might not be consistent strengths for you, but that are opportunities for incredible wisdom. And
Mm.
there's nobody else on the planet like you that has the combination of unique strengths and unique opportunities for wisdom. And there
For
never
each,
has been, and there
for
never
each
will
of
be again.
us, for each of us.
For
Vanessa's
every
not
single
talking
one of
about
you.
me. She's talking
Yes.
about all of us, the unique gifts that we all have. I do want to get back to, at some point, what are the other uh, things that what are the other places in the human design that make my need or my gift, um, my role or my expression be so important about communicating? What are the other areas of my design that I should be looking at to understand?
Before I answer that, I want to just very briefly go back to the consistent versus inconsistent throat
Okay.
center. So if you have a consistent throat center or it's defined in your design, you have a very consistent way of expressing and communicating and speaking. And what that is going to depend on how your throat is configured. If
Mhm.
your throat is undefined or inconsistent, and this is much, much rarer, in the chart. The throat is a hub of energy. It's much more common to have it defined, inconsistent than undefined. But I'll give an example of a very famous person who has an undefined and inconsistent throat center, and that is Oprah Winfrey. So
Huh.
people that have this undefined, they have a wide variety of expressing themselves. It's actually can be potentially unlimited, and they're able to receive and pick up the way others express themselves and then amplify that back. And one gift that people with undefined throat centers have is to give voice to those that do not have a voice.
Mm. Mm. Mhm. That's so important, Vanessa. And we can all see that about Oprah. She,
Yeah.
she's, she tells a story. Somebody was interviewing her and said, "So, what if you didn't have that break and you didn't go on TV and you just stayed in that small town where you lived with your grandmother?" She said, "I'd be speaking and doing it. I'd probably have a market or a store, and I'd be working at the store, talking to the people just the way I did on TV." And
Yeah. And that is such a
that's
great
what you
example.
said, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Giving voice to those that can't necessarily share. And also, a lot of times people that have undefined or inconsistent throat centers, they're really gifted with maybe picking up languages and also dialects, doing like interpretations of other people's like people and things like that. Like it's a unique gift in itself. So whether something is defined or consistent in your chart or undefined and inconsistent, it's neither good nor bad. They're just different and they have different gifts and powers.
I love this. I love this. And I hope everybody's really hearing that because it's the same thing with Enneagrams. We make things good and bad, and that has never been the intent. It's more about the strategy, what are the gifts of it, and how. But does this come up in the human design? Our strategy describes our motivation. And for me, it tells me immediately the kind of family you came from. And I know not everybody goes that deeply, but there's, when you go deeply with the Enneagram, it's a spiritual program because our strategies were overused because they worked when we were children. They were the best we had. And so it's very important to get to the point, if you want to go all the way with the Enneagram, to know that your strategy is not you, that we want to get to your essence. And that's not like a body. It's not like there's another you. Is any of that, like the part about your strategy being overused, is that explained at all in human design?
So I want to clarify because there is a term in human design that is strategy, and it is different from how you just explained it. So in human design, your strategy is also known, it's like your personal interaction style, and it's how you reduce unnecessary resistance in your life. And it's specific to like a bigger overarching theme in human design, which are the human design types. So for example, for you, Rosalind, you're a manifesting generator, and your strategy is to wait to respond. So unlike a manifestor whose strategy is to go out and initiate new things based on the urges that have come through them, yours is to actually wait and see, like, what is the universe bringing me? And then to really feel into your body, like, is this a yes or a no for me? And so there are different strategies for the human design types, and the main goal is just to reduce resistance. And we are conditioned to do things logically. Because the thing is, when you're following your strategy and we add on to that your authority, which is your decision making style, when you put those together, sometimes you're going to be asked to do things that are totally illogical, where people think you're absolutely nuts. And this was actually my move to Grenada, West Indies, where I had never been and I didn't know anybody. But I was like, I'm moving there, and people thought I was crazy, and it was absolutely the best thing for me based on strategy and authority. Whereas we're very conditioned to follow logic, make a pros and cons list, and add up all the numbers for the pros versus the cons, and then make a logically based decision. And that's not, in human design, we're not using our mind to make decisions. We're using our mind to lies, to share ideas, to share what is our outer authority, what supports other people. But when it comes to decision making, it's our body, it's our inner self that knows what's best for us, and that's independent of the mind. And that can get, like, that conversation can get really nuanced, but I just wanted to clarify that in human design, move path without having to say we do need to experience some resistance in life in order to grow. However, it's better to have the right resistance against your unique energy. So I wanted to specify that before continue. you did mention situation. There's a specific detail, very advanced in human design. Human design is very specific feedback, like and how that's kind of separate from your strategy. And then finish off by condition and nature are all consistent mind chart. Are what we call undefined, where you are taking an energy and information from around you, from other people, and this is where you can become conditioned, but also where your opportunities for exceptional wisdom lie. So we have, we have nature and we have nurture. Human design shows you both. You work with them in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So how did human design help you with your own emotions?
So this goes to where we were talking earlier about the emotional center. And I had brought up emotional waves. And so those of us that have a defined emotional center or a consistent emotional center, we have these waves of emotion and they work differently. And there are several different ones. I'm going to describe mine specifically. It's called the tribal wave. And the way the tribal wave works is that it's concerned with equality, with, give and take, balance, these types of things. And when these things are off, it's usually also in relationships with other people and especially people that are close to you. When things start coming out of balance, that tribal wave is a little bit triggered. And the way that it tends to work is it slowly kind of ratchets up, like more pressure is added. And an example of how pressure can be added is, say you have a father who has the tribal wave. And his agreement with his kids is that they do the dishes when they come home from school. And now the father comes home from work, the dishes aren't done. He doesn't say anything, but the pressure builds, his wave ratchets up a little bit. He just does the dishes himself, doesn't say anything. The next day, he comes home and again, dirty dishes in the sink. He does the dishes again. The wave ratchets up a little bit, doesn't say anything. The next day, he comes home and there are socks on the floor. And again, this is not in agreement, the agreement that he at least thought he had. Okay, was it verbal? Was it not? I don't know. But if he had an agreement in his head thinking the kids are supposed to keep the house tidy for when I come home, now the pressure is building again, and it builds and it builds and it builds. And then at some point, some tiny little thing that is like, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, and there is a massive explosion. So he can blow up and yell and scream, and the kids are like, "Oh my goodness, like what happened?" Like it was just, I don't know, the towel was on the floor. Like it's not that big a deal. Now the father, who has a tribal wave, the wave resets. The pressure has now been released by the explosion. There is potentially collateral damage. The kids are potentially like totally freaked out now and are like hiding in their room. But the pressure has reset and we're back to baseline. And the tribal wave is a very difficult wave when you don't understand it. And it can often be misdiagnosed as all kinds of things. And when I learned about this tribal wave thing, and there are ways to also manage it. Like one good one is like, make sure your agreements are spoken. And when something happens, we're like, oh, hey, you agreed to do the dishes before I come home from work, but here I am and the dishes aren't done. Could you please do them now and remember to do them tomorrow? Okay, then we don't have this constant building up of the wave. The other thing is you are still going to have wave crashes sometimes. It's inevitable and it's okay to have them. But also knowing, like, I know when I'm going to have a wave crash coming, like, I know it's coming and I'm going to go hang out by myself. I might have a little meltdown, maybe a little crying or screaming in a pillow, whatever it is that I need to release the pressure without taking it out on other people. And so when I learned about this wave and how it works, I was like, okay, I'm not totally nuts. Okay, this is great. Because one of the things that happens when you have an emotional wave is that when you're at the bottom of the wave, you run the risk of falling into the trap of thinking that it is always going to be like this. I'm always going to be like this. I'm never going to feel better. It can turn into massive depression. It can get really ugly. But when you realize, okay, I'm at the bottom of my wave, it's going to pass, then you're okay.
Mhm.
And so learning that, really understanding my wave, being able to track it and just know like, I'm just, I'm low on my wave, or
Mhm.
I'm about to have an explosion. I am not going to do it in your presence and take it out on you because I'm blaming you for something, but I'm
Mhm.
taking accountability for myself, my ability to communicate the agreements openly and discuss when they haven't been met and renegotiate them if necessary.
Mhm.
Like it has changed all of my relationships, like all of them.
I can see that. It's the tribal wave is a great description of a person who's conflict avoidant and who believes that a peaceful, nice person is a better person. And so they put everything in a gunny sack, all the little things. And then eventually the gunny sack is full and it's going to fall apart. Um, and it has beautiful counterparts in the Enneagram, of course, spoken of completely differently. And I want to make sure that I understand, that everybody understands. I'm not I'm not advocating human design instead of the Enneagram. I want to say how it intersects beautifully. Maybe each has a better um, access to certain dimensions, while the other is different. They're not the same at all. And yet, in the Enneagram is called, the four is called the individualist. And how much did that come up in my chart?
That's written all over your chart. And I want to see really quickly before we move on into that part, um, just tying the tribal wave back to the Enneagram. I had told you, and I've shared this with another Enneagram friend as well, that when I first learned about the Enneagram, I couldn't figure out whether I was a 7 or a 4. And I'm clearly a 7. But the having that tribal wave and those crashes and those emotional lows is what made me think I might be a 4.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how like they can complement each other in that way as well.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to like figuring out like, oh, which one actually am I? Now,
Mhm.
when your chart, you have individuality is written all over your chart in a lot of different ways. And short of going into too many of the details of the chart, um, your chart and your purpose like specifically shows that you're here to experiment, to bring change to the collective and to do it in a very unique way that is completely individualistic to you and is not meant to be influenced by the outside, by
Mhm.
other people, by you know what the current best practices are or how you should, you know, what you should talk about, how you should talk about it. Like none of that matters. You have to do it in the way that's correct for you. And now that is true on a big level for everybody. You have to do it your way. Rosalind's way just happens to be incredibly unique and individualistic, and she's very much here to bring change and to bring things that nobody has ever seen before and that people might not even be ready for yet. Her people are going to be ready for it. There's going to be a bunch of people out there that aren't ready for it now, but later they'll come back to what she has presented and be like, this woman is a brilliant genius once they become ready for it. So a lot of, I'm just going to flip back to your chart, like a lot of your chart is incredibly creative. Like you have the most creative channel in design in your chart. And it's actually what also gives you that emotional definition. And you are in your environment and with the people that you're around, you're meant to be incredibly individualistic and expressing yourself in the now in an intuitive way and in a way that speaks truth to power. So you're not here to, you know, like you're going to do it differently. You're not going to be afraid to call out BS when you see it, and you're willing to take whatever might come with that. And you are here to use that ability to to shape the collective and to get your message out to a large group of people. And
Yeah.
so some of that is through, you know, for people that might know a little bit more about human design, what I just used to describe Rosalind was based on her profile or public role, and also based on her channels and her nodes. So if you know a little bit more about human design, that's specifically what I'm talking to here. And if you don't worry, you don't need to know any of those things. Just know that what is in your human design chart very much complements what is also in her Enneagram.
So this was hearing this from Vanessa intersected where I was with TEDx in the most direct and profound way. It's going to come out in a musings that you get. You probably have already gotten before you get this one. But in case you didn't read it or listen, I was at a place with TEDx that because they want everything researched and proven, and they didn't want to hear about death, they just wanted it, they were going to allow it in the back door, like as an example of difficult conversations. But the very reason we need to talk about death is what was coming up. We're very interested. We're fascinated by you. We're interested in the talk, but, and then I have these two consultants who were showing me how I could have a TEDx talk in all these other ways. And I was starting to write these wonderful proposals, and they were wonderful. They were true. They were wonderful in that they were a contribution. But so many other people could say any of those talks that were a therapist, that were my age. It's discoverable. What I have to say about death is where my power is. And it allowed me to say no, thank you. Thank you for the teachings. Thank you for this experience. Now I have that voice in my head, which is a valuable voice of, is this provable? Will people, this is a place where you're going to hit doubt. This is a place where people are unsure. All of those things, plus the gift of these two wonderful men and the other mentors I had through TEDx. I'm not even the person who was starting to write the first talk a couple of years ago. I'm so developed since then, but it's time to say goodbye. And do not goodbye to the talk, my original talk, but put it on YouTube where nobody's saying what I can speak. And now I have that vulnerable place of how am I going to do it? What am I going to like? But I am going to do it. And I'm going to trust each intuition as it comes to me, as it unfolds in a new way, not the original TED Talk that was written out in 12 pages for TEDx. It's going to be new and fresh, or I'm not going to do it. And I'll pull the plug on that too with that yes, no. If that comes strongly, I won't do it immediately, impulsively, like I did when I was young and so impulsive, like the waves would take over in your language. But it just clarified not my gifts in an egotistical sense, but the way you put it in purpose. This is my purpose. This is aligned to give this talk. It doesn't matter that most people don't want to hear it and they glaze over. And my besties, like when I bring it up again, like I can feel a part of them like, oh God, I thought we were done with death. Like, are you going to bring it up again? And it doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter. And I'm still going to do it, which is everything you just said. So, yeah, you are pivotal in my life. That meeting was pivotal. And every other time I tried to decline the services of my consultants, they came back with another way. There was always a little bit in my message of ambiguity. Like I thought in my outer self that TED was the next step after best-selling book. That was what the world said. And that may be true for other people. But being 78, I don't need to build anything. It doesn't need to be any next step for something else. It just needs to be authentic and what needs to be expressed and how it's received pulls me out. The numbers pull me out. How many people are listening? How many people liked it? That distracts me, confuses me, because on the Enneagram, I am on the approval triad. And so this came out in human design as a responder. I think it's the low side of looking for approval to being a responder to what's out there. Is that true? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I think it's very much about that there's that conditioning in there, because you said, what you do when you have a best-selling book is you go on do a TED talk, because that's the conditioning of like how it's done. And that's what most people buy into. I'm like, well, you're the best practices, this is how we do it. You do this and this and this and these and these and these steps. And for you, it's not necessarily about going in a step-by-step way. Like, you're going to move around, you're meant to find the fastest way, you're going to skip unnecessary steps. Sometimes you'll skip steps that you have to go back and redo, but it's not this linear path. But really, for everybody, is there is not like, this is how you do it. They're like, or this is the best way to do it. There's the way that's the best way for you. And for you specifically, Rosalind, is you need to share your unique message in your unique way. And you cannot let anybody else water it down or give you a script or give you a topic of like, well, just talk about this instead because this will pass whatever the TED test is. Because it's not going to, when you do that, you could probably still give a good talk,
Yeah, they
but
were
it's
good
not the
talks, but they
highest
weren't.
expression of your frequency, because it's like,
Yeah.
it's not what lights you up. It's not what you're meant to talk about. And you know
It's
exactly what
human.
you're meant to talk about. And if that's not for TED, then it's not for TED. But
Yeah.
it's going to, when you are really living in alignment in human design, is, we say living in alignment and like following what's correct for you, your people are going to find you.
Yeah.
And what
And
better place than YouTube? Like anybody can find you.
so what is that about the part that's very leery? Do you think it's just conditioning of caring? There was a time, and I can get into that. But it's a distraction of what do people think, or do they like it, or the approval. Is that just conditioning, or is that in the chart somewhere? Is that the waves?
No, I don't see it in your emotional system. I think it is more, well, one thing in your chart is that you don't have consistent identity and direction. And that center is, the center for love, identity, and direction. So it's always looking for love, identity, and direction. So it could,
That's the Enneagram. Yeah.
yeah, so it could very well be that part of it, like, and people that have this, I mean, you actually have a gift of being a chameleon, where you don't necessarily have this very specific path or this very specific identity or this very specific direction. And an excellent example of this, and this is somebody who's built literally $1 billion brand on this, is Taylor Swift and her eras. So she's probably the most popular pop star in the world right now. And she has literally built, she's the only person in the world that has ever built $1 billion business on music alone. Because all the other musician billionaires are billionaires because of their, products or whatever their other things they've branched out into. And her most recent tour is called the Eras Tour, where she went like literally every album is like a different era where she completely reinvents herself. And she knows, I mean, I doubt she knows her human design, but she doesn't need to follow this one specific direction. And it's a little bit chameleon like, but in this beautiful way, like you get to reinvent yourself all the time. And that is the wisdom and the gift of the non-consistent identity and direction center. Whereas
So,
somebody that has a consistent might have a very specific direction that they're heading into, and their identity is very consistent, and that's just how they do it. And the shadow of the inconsistent identity, which yours is inconsistent, can be to be like, oh, I need to do it in this certain very specific way that everybody else is doing it. And the
mm,
truth is you don't.
mhm.
If you
And
were meant to, it would be in your design. And instead
yeah,
you get to become
well,
incredibly wise about love, identity, and direction, and know that you don't, it doesn't need to be one way for you.
so fours on the Enneagram are the most uh, aware of unworthiness feelings. In my book, I call it imagined unworthiness because it's not true. And that's what just occurred to me, that maybe the validation is related to that imagined unworthiness. Because for every second you get the approval, that means the unworthiness is gone. It's like, check. No, it's not true. No, it's not true. So that makes sense. And fours have an arrow to two, and twos are the biggest chameleons. So it's not you always get Rosalind. You don't get Rosalind is a high today and Rosalind's not deep today. You don't I can't do that very well. But I have access to maybe wanting to when I was younger to be the popular one or the whatever. But I've always been the one that was a little different in the artistic sense.
Yeah, and with the artistic sense and that being a little different is that your design is heavily um and we've brought up some of these terms already. We've talked about like tribal as far as the wave is concerned. We've talked about individual. There's also a lot of collective energy in the chart. And you can have somebody like I have all of them kind of in equal measure in my personal design, but you can lean more heavily towards one, and your chart leans very heavily towards individual.
Mm.
So that's definitely going to show up as like being different, being very creative and artistic and putting things out there that nobody has seen before. It's very much about bringing change, and that is in a lot of areas of your chart, is about bringing change, about trying out things, being the first to discover something new and then sharing it with people. And that is in a lot of places in your design.
So something that I think our whole community is interested in is purpose. And human design has a section or an area that talks about purpose. And it's not purpose in like we're talking about giving my talk or being a scientist or volunteering. It's not about what you do in the world, in my understanding. It's how you show up, would you say?
Yeah, I would say so. There are a lot of areas in anybody's human design chart that really show you your purpose. And again, it's not like, oh, you are here to, be a doctor that specializes in like, no, it's not like that. Because again, this goes back to there's nothing it says specific like you have to do this or you can't do this. It's more about the quality of how you do it and like what you bring to it. And there are definitely some very clear specifics in the chart. The chart can also talk more about like the environment that you do your best work in and how you do your best work in that kind of environment. Like, to somebody who really needs to have privacy and be like super enclosed versus somebody who wants a bunch of people flitting around and like they thrive on that energy around them. um you know, your chart can show you that. It can also show you like the ideal others that you are meant to work with. And again, it's not specific people, but it's qualities in people that you are especially gifted at working with. And how you do your work. So one of the things, you know, that I mentioned for you, Rosalind, is that you're very provocative in what you do, in the sense of that you are here to provoke the spirit of others. And sometimes that provocation is going to feel really good to somebody, and there are also going to be people that are very provoked by you and are like, oh no, not for me. And that's okay, because those aren't your people. Or maybe they're not your people now because they're not ready to be your people, and eventually they become your people. And however, it's still very specific about provoking the spirit of others and also fighting the good fight. Like,
Where does the purpose come out? What part of the chart?
so this part of the chart that I'm just talking about right now is your incarnation cross. And this is about the conscious and unconscious sun and earth placements. But there are also like deeper layers in your chart, and also the overarching theme. So for example, as a manifesting generator, you are here to really, like, you're here to work, but you're here to find meaningful work that you absolutely love, that really lights you up, while you're also finding the fastest, most efficient way to complete that work. But there are other types
That's
that
the
are
cutting
more here
corner.
to guide the work. You're here to do the work that you love. You have the consistent energy for it. And other types that don't have that consistent energy, that are here to guide or evaluate the process, or that are here to start the process, but not to actually carry it all the way through to the end. So there
Mm.
are very many different layers in your human design chart that point to your purpose. And ultimately, we kind of synthesize them all together. And it's about how you do what you do, not so much what you're doing specifically.
What can you tell us something about your purpose from your chart?
Oh my goodness. My chart. So I'm also a manifesting generator. So doing work that really lights me up and finding efficiency is huge in my chart. But for me, I am here to provide practical solutions based
Mm.
on things that I have researched and deeply studied, and to do it in a way that really stimulates people emotionally through the stories that I tell, through the experiences that I share, that I've been through in my life, and doing it in a way that is nurturing, communicating it in a nurturing and caring way, doing it in a way that is structured, and also that helps lead people towards meaning and purpose.
Mhm.
So basically, what I've just synthesized in my chart is my incarnation cross, as well as my profile or public role.
Mhm.
And of course, my
Numbers-
human design type, which manifesting generator.
I'm a 3-5. That doesn't need to mean anything to
Yes,
anyone.
it is. That's your profile, and can also be known as your public role, is a 3-5. And
And
the
what are
3
you?
is,
What numbers are you?
I'm 5-1.
5-1.
So the 5 is the practical problem solver, can sometimes be seen as the savior. They're very much about bringing solutions. And in your case, the 3 is about that trial and error process and discovering new things. It's pioneering energy and basically solving problems through what you've discovered through that pioneering energy. And for me, the way I solve the problems is through the things that I've deeply researched and embodied.
Mm-hmm.
So in my business, for example, I use human design, and I also bring in emotional intelligence, two things that I have deeply studied, experiment, like really embodied in my life. And I use that to provide practical solutions for
Mm.
other people, and particularly in terms of business and entrepreneurship, which is also written all over my chart. Like the
Mm.
entrepreneurship part is very dominant in my chart.
Mm. This is great. Um, I want to check out what I told my sister in terms of whether you think this is this was my personal advice about how to approach human design. So correct me if there's better advice. Um, I feel I'd like to, maybe I don't need to be doing this, but I'd like to present the human design in the easiest way so that people don't throw it away because of the jargon that they don't know, like incarnation cross. That could make someone like that was Jewish and that here cross, oh, this is Christian, oh, this is, like just make associations that have nothing to do with what it means. So here's what I told her. I said, get your chart, that's free. Get your summary from Vanessa. You can get this on Vanessa's website. Get your summary, what do you call that? Your explanation, what
Yeah, the free purpose guide. Yeah,
it's
that little report that gives you
yeah, the
kind of the big
report.
overview.
Get your
Yeah.
report, that's free. And then here was my suggestion. Go on her podcast and bite by bite, first start with your type, whether you're generator, manifestor, whatever the words are. Listen to the short podcast on the words that are on your chart. And then, if you're still interested and you're curious, when you get a reading, purchase an hour with Vanessa, 50 minutes, whatever it is, the words won't be scrambling. You won't be trying to translate from another language, which is when all the words are new, you're behind the conversation. That's what I suggested. And correct me if there's a better way to approach it.
I actually think that's a great way. And the direct podcast episodes are actually linked in that free guide. And it's really helpful, like when you come into a reading, in order to get the most out of it, already knowing about kind of the bigger picture parts of your chart is going to be really helpful, because that's all stuff that we don't need to spend an hour together of me like telling you things that you can already easily get online, get off my podcast, get on the report, so that when we are in our reading together, we can actually focus in more deeply on pulling all of those separate things together. Because with human design, in order to learn anything, we have to break it down into smaller chunks. But these chunks they're not separate from each other. And, this is, the way, for example, if you're learning anatomy, you might learn anatomy of this musculoskeletal system first, and then you learn the anatomy of the digestive system and the nervous system. Like, you learn them all separately, but it's all tied together. They don't live in isolation. So it's the same thing with human design. It all ties together. And you're a manifesting generator and I'm a manifesting generator. Like, we know what manifesting generator means based on our discussion, not necessarily the discussion here because we didn't dive deep into types, but we both know what that means. However, based on all these other parts of our design, it's going to express very differently. So when you come into a reading, if you already know kind of the main big three of your design, which I cover in that report, you're going to get a lot more out of the reading, and we can go more into like answering specific questions and how to actually make design practical for you based on whatever you might be struggling with at the moment. Because
Yes.
even with you, Rosalind, like, I'm going to give you we're going to have a very different reading when you come in asking about, one specific thing about work, versus if you come in asking about something very different that might tie into your relationships or something else that's going on in your life. And those discussions are going to look completely different based on your question, and will be much more efficient if you already know some of the things in your chart. And of course, you also get a recording so you can listen back to it,
Mhm.
ask questions, all of that good stuff.
Yes, and I did give my sister one caveat. I said, this is what I believe could be useful. If someone had a big decision in their lives and they're not looking to just understand human design in general, having, like, let's say it was my chart and I was offered a teaching job. This is what I said to her. The consultant would not say, yes, take the job, or no, take the job, but it would maybe ask me, where else am I going to be expressing myself if I don't take this job? Like, point up the need in my chart to speak to more than one person. And that seemed to be helpful to her, that whatever your question is would show up in your chart and could be understood through the lens of your question. So if someone has a big relationship question or a big work question or a living question, not studying the way I said the podcast and the this and the that, but just coming in, knowing they would hear language right now they didn't understand, but there would be clear, I think, powerful pointers, not answers, pointers that a person could get really significant guidance. Is that true?
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And we also, because the things we can see in the chart is like, where is conditioning
Mm,
coming in and influencing your decision
mm,
versus really making it from your own inner authority. And
mm.
also, something really interesting we can see in the design pretty specifically is around fears and anxieties and nervousness and things like that. Like, there are going to be some areas that are a lot more consistent on what kind of fears you might be avoiding. Maybe
Oh,
you're making a
wow.
decision because you're like, I'm afraid of this. And it's, an irrational fear that you actually kind of need to walk into in order to overcome it. So there's a lot of these little nuances based on the design that when somebody comes in because they're trying to make a big decision, that we can kind of dive in deeper to help them really access their own inner authority. I'm never going to be like, yeah, this is for you, or no, this is not for you, because again, the chart doesn't show if this is for you or not, but the chart does help you really dive deeper on what are the issues that are kind of in the background that are influencing your decision, and how can we get clean and clear about it so they're no longer influencing your decision, so you can really focus in on your inner authority and your inner knowing of what the correct decision is.
Wow, this has been so amazing, Vanessa. Thank you for coming on. And we're going to put in the show notes, otherwise called the email, all the ways that you can reach Vanessa or just receive your human design. I like the way your setup for your, and all you need to get your human design is your birth time, your birthplace, the country, and that's it, right?
Well, so yeah, birth date,
Date,
time.
time.
Time is important. So if you get it and you're not certain about your time, just send me a little note and let me know. Because time, some days it makes a big difference, other days not so much.
So how do
Time
they
does.
do it? They write to you first before they get the time.
No,
If
they can just they can, basically what happens is when they put in the information, if you don't know your birth time, just put in noon. You're going to automatically receive an email from me after, and then just reply to that email and just say,
okay.
hey, I don't actually know my exact birth time, and give me your best estimate. Like, if you know, okay, I was born sometime in the morning or sometime late at night, or I have absolutely zero idea,
Yeah.
just let me know if it's not, if your birth time isn't specific.
And how do you
And
work with that? Can you get an accurate chart without the time?
I can, to a certain degree, if sometimes, like I said, sometimes there are not major changes during the day.
Um,
One thing that will change every day is the profile, which we talked about, the 3-5 for you. That is going to change. Um, it changes a couple of times a day. Sometimes I've had charts where I looked at somebody's chart where they didn't know what they were born, and it could have been 3 potential different human design types, a bunch of different profiles. The sun is really shining in, so it's why. Afternoon. Um, so there can be a lot of drastic changes, and then in order to help somebody narrow down the time, I can ask a lot of questions.
mhm.
Um, when we look at the much deeper layers of the human design chart, the time does need to be very accurate. And, for anybody that is really interested in human design or even astrology, and you really need an accurate birth time, you can also, there is something called birth time rectification that you would do with an astrologer, where they get very detailed based on experiences you've had in your life, and they're able to really narrow down the birth time. That's not me, that's not my specialty, but people are out there that do it. And the other thing, if you don't know your birth time, if you were born in the US or Europe, oftentimes you can contact the hospital, or you can get a detailed, like an advanced birth certificate that will have the time. I forget exactly what year they started recording that, but in many countries, or most countries in the US and Europe, at a certain time, if you were born in a hospital, they started recording very specific birth times, which you can get access to on your birth certificate. So that is also an option that I recommend if you're not sure about birth time.
Thank you. Are there any final words that you would like to share about why someone might want to have their human design chart done?
Really, if you're somebody, and I suspect you are if you're into the Enneagram, who really values self-understanding and getting to know yourself and also your loved ones on a deeper level, because you can also do relationship readings, are very different, family readings. But if that is something that you really value and you want to understand, like how to best express yourself and connect with others and really shine your light in the world, a human design reading will be really beneficial for that. So
Mhm.
yeah,
And
that's
that would be great because there are many people, I don't know what percent, but maybe 30 or 40% of people who watch this that are not in the Enneagram. They're just in my larger community. And maybe if the Enneagram has not been your thing, this might be an avenue. um, More than the human design, I want to say that Vanessa has something. And if you're feeling a pull to be with her and learn more, I suggest following it. It's been life-changing for me. There are more things that happened during that time with her that were very validating of my life experience and very, very helpful, just like she said, to know the tribal wave was a thing that really helped her rather than, this is just you being crazy. And we all have those thoughts. So, yeah, if you're feeling the impulse or the pull to check in with her, I encourage you to do that. Thank you, Vanessa. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosa.